And now, Bob is going to come up and share with us.
Hey, you guys. So I'm Bob. It's good to see you. You should have seen me at Show and Tell when I was in high school. Hey, I'm just so glad to be with you guys. Thanks for letting me be with you. I'm a lawyer, but I am also the Consul General for Uganda. Isn't that crazy? I'm not the U.S. guy to Uganda. I'm the Ugandan guy to the U.S. Go figure that one out. I walk into embassies, they're like, where's the Ugandan guy? I'm like, I'm the Ugandan guy. I got asked by this outfit, Thomas Nelson, a book publisher, if I would write a book a little while ago. And they said, would you write a book? And I said, I don't know, will you build a school? I'll trade you, one book for one school. And they said, well, okay, well, how big's the school? And I said, all right, 400 child soldiers in northern Uganda and 40 teachers. And they said, big school? I said, big book. And I made them pay me in advance. I didn't know if it'd be any good. And on the last page, so we built the school in the north where this 25-year war has been raging. And I asked them on the last page of the book, there was a little bit of room. So I said, would it be okay if I put my cell phone number on the last page of the book? You guys, they looked at me like I was on crack. I'm like, well, now I have to. Not go on crack, but put my cell phone number. And I did, you guys, there's 1.5 million people that have my cell phone number. It's crazy. And I don't send anybody to voicemail. I get 100 calls a day. I can't get a thing done. It's terrific. Here's the point. I think people don't follow vision. I think they follow availability. People that are just available. I'm never the smartest guy in the room. I can see all of you by a long shot. But I'll tell you this, I'm the most available guy in the room. I literally get all these calls in, and the reason I do it is because Jesus was available to people. And he had his shirt tails hang down, and somebody like yanked on, he's like, who was that? Or a little guy in a sycamore tree, he's like, lunch on you. He had time for everybody. And it was the first thing that God made was time, and it's the last thing that I make. Maybe you too, you don't have to raise your hands. No pointing. But one of the things that we do, if you want to lead well in your community, you want to rock things in your family, just literally be available. And don't just be in the proximity of the people that you love, but actually be present. And there's a bunch of us that are in proximity to our wives and our girlfriends. You got to pick one, but we're not actually present. And I think this idea, if you could walk out of here with something that I just want to be just unreasonably available to people. I want to be actually present in the conversations that I have with my wife. And I love Sweet Maria like I love to breathe. I think she's awesome, but we are nothing the same. Literally, when we got married, they said two become one. She thought we were going to become her. I'm like, oh, heck no. I'm like Tigger, right? Oh, I got to show you Maria. She's just terrific. I don't know where I put this clicker. It's around here somewhere. Oh, here we go. This is Maria. And she is just unlike me. I get around people, I'm like, people, this is oxygen to me. And she thinks having me in the room's a lot of people. And rounding up, she's come to a total of nothing I've ever spoken at, ever. Isn't that awesome? It's like seeing a unicorn. But one of the things that's helped us in our marriage, maybe it'll help you in yours, is this idea that I'm not trying to be like her, and she's not trying to be like me, but we're trying to be like Jesus. But like the Bob version of Jesus, the guy that's available to everybody. I get some wacky calls. There's some kid in Mississippi, I think, from his area code that calls me up. He just cusses at me. I'm a lawyer. I thought I knew all the cuss words. Evidently, there's new ones. And he just cusses, and we've never gotten to what he's mad at. But I end the same conversation always this way. I say, I will always take your call. Because I don't want him to climb a tower with a gun or say that to some guy that just walked out of a biker bar. I mean, they'll kill him. Well, that idea to just not be right, but for those of you where faith is becoming a big deal, to not be right, but be Jesus. And that's really hard for a guy like me. I'm a lawyer. I win arguments for a living. And I'm always right. Even when I'm wrong, I'm right. You know, some of you are the same way, but Jesus doesn't need a lawyer. He doesn't want one, and you're not very good at it. He wants people that are humble voices. He wants people that know how to actually be present with each other. Sweet Marie and I, we play catch with this softball. I don't even like baseball, but we play catch with this thing because if I answer the phone while I'm talking to her, I'll lose teeth. Literally, she like zing one in there. But it's just another strategy to be present. I'll tell you something I did with my kids a long time ago. I memorized their thumbprints. Literally, I am the only guy on earth that knows what my kids' thumbprints look like. I could draw it for you right now. What if you go home and look at something closely? You know what? Your wife, your kids, they'll think you've jumped the tracks. And you know what? You have. Just slow down your busy life and do that one thing. The thing about that is that people want to know that somebody knows them that well. And coming from you, it wouldn't matter if I memorized their thumbprints, but dads, husbands, do that for a wife or a kid or the person next door, whoever, the guy that's giving you a parking ticket. They'll haul you away. But that idea of looking at things closely, if you are available, if you are engaged, they'll end up seeing Jesus. It'll be dressed up in your clothes and paying your mortgage, but they'll actually see Jesus. And that's the crazy part. I spend about 9 months out of the year in San Diego, and the other 3 months out of the year, I live up at the end of an inlet in Canada. It's called the Princess Louisa Inlet. My nearest neighbor is 10,000 square miles away. I mean, I'm all alone up there. And we make our electricity off a glacier on the property. We grow our own food. We catch salmon in the river. It's really just beautiful. I've found a cadence in my life. I can just do all this stuff, but there's times that you've got to rest. And some of you are going Mach 5, your hair's on fire. Maybe you're killing it in the business world. Maybe it's killing you. But one of the things I want you to think about is that this next version of you, this version, the man or woman that you're becoming, you gotta feed some oats to that pony. Like some of you are just running ragged. Somebody did this for me once and it made a big impact on me. What they did is they took a tape measure and they did it not in inches, but in whatever the other one is. And they said, how long are you going to live? Yeah, how long are you going to live?
Am I going to live?
Yeah.
Yeah. According to IRS.
I mean, are you a plane pilot? Are you any good at it? It'll have an effect. What do you think, 85, 90?
85.
Okay. So, there's 85. Okay, how old are you right now?
72.
72. I'm 58. So this is what we got. And so when I'm thinking about being available, being present to people, I mean, this is what I've got. I'm 58, I think I'll go 83. I am a pilot, but I'm not very good at it. So maybe shorter. I get easily distracted. I'm like, squirrel. So, have you picked up on that? So, what a great thing to remind you. Just carry this thing around in your pocket and just say, when somebody wants to argue about stuff, you say, do we really need to spend it? I've done the math. I got 10,000 days left. And if everything goes great. And I'm how are you going to spend your days? I got 4 or 5 inches left. And you know what? You guys do too. Maybe you're 6. Maybe the young guy in the crowd. But it just brings it into focus. And when somebody wants to engage you in an argument, I was actually in Fort Collins and we had this beautiful evening together. They said, we're renting out the Civic Center and we're going to fill it up and will you come? And I said, tell you what, I'll come so long as you don't fill it full of people that go to church. Bring everybody who doesn't. And we had this beautiful, I got there early, I saw the t-shirts, they got the right people. And so we had this beautiful evening together. And when it was all done, they said, now it's time for question and answer. And I'm like, no, because you never know who's going to ask them. Sure enough, this big religious guy grabs the microphone, he said, I want to know if you'd marry 2 gay people. I'm like, of course not, I'm already married. But you know what I said? You know what I do is I just look to Scripture. I would just say, what's the most loving thing I'm allowed to do? And that's what I do. And if I didn't know, I wouldn't do it. What if we just, instead of making your faith easy, make it simple? Literally. I go to church and they talk about all these words in Hebrew and Greek, and I'm like, just tell me to memorize my daughter's thumbprint. And when Lindsay decided it was time to start dating, she was 41. And so we decided it was time to date. And I said, you know, honey, somebody's going to invite you to the prom, and I want you to ask the guy this. Just tell me what your definition of love is. And because he's a guy, he won't know. I say, well, you go home and figure it out. And when you know what love is, you come back and ask me again. I'll tell you if I'll go. And if he comes back and says, you know, it's like butterflies. I mean, you can get that from bad pizza. But love is sacrifice and commitment. Say that with me, men. Love is sacrifice and commitment. Go home to your wives and say, honey, I love you. And you know what love means to me? It means sacrifice and commitment. And I only got 5 or 6 inches left on my, I talked to this guy and he says I only have about this much time, and be a good friend too. Do you know if you grab a handful of sand from one of these sand traps out here, they won't mind. That is 400,000 grains of sand. A little more, a little less, depending on the size of your fist. But that's 400,000. You let it go, some's gonna stick. Those are your friends. I did the math. If I live 85 years and I meet 14 people a day, that's 400,000. You're only going to meet a handful of people. So what are you going to do with those people? I want to go a little deeper, don't you? You want to just be more present with people, more engaged in the conversations, and not swinging at every pitch that comes by. And then welcoming joy into your life. We had a dog. I hate to speak ill of the dead, but I mean, it was just mean as a rattlesnake. And it lived for 15 years. It was a tiny teacup poodle. It was hypoallergenic, which I didn't know it meant it was allergic to us. And so it bit me for 15 years and barked. And well, he passed on and went to wherever he went to. I have some suspicions. And we got a new puppy about a month ago. This is our puppy. It's awesome. She's happy. We don't know what to do with a happy dog. It like licks us, but we're trying to housebreak it right now. And it's not working. The only thing she's missed is the gland. Like literally. It's nuts. But there's so much joy in this puppy. I don't mind. I'm like, I could put my blazer down. I'm like, take a dump on that. I don't care. One of the best things you have, it'll be your availability, it'll be your engagement, actually being present, not in proximity, and your joy. And don't fake it. Just be wonderful you, your version of joy. My version of joy is Tigger. Sweet Maria's version of joy is Wise Owl. So figure out how God wired you and do that, and then know what you want. Something you guys don't know about me, we have schools in Mogadishu and Iraq and lots of different places. And I was in Iraq. I was right when they were going to invade Mosul. And there's a lot of people fleeing. And I woke up in the morning and I couldn't see out of my right eye. I was like, oh, shoot. Could have stared at the sun. And so like a knucklehead, I went to 5 more countries before I got back to San Diego to the eye doctor. And he said, buddy, you are the stupidest smart guy I've ever met before. And they've been doing all these operations on it, 7 so far. And before every operation, I ask the doctor the same thing. I say, how much am I going to be able to see and when? And you know what? He won't tell me. He says the same thing, everything. He says, Bob, you're gonna see more. And you know what? Because he's a doctor I trust, I'm good with that. For those of you that are understanding a little bit more about what Jesus might mean in the world for you, that's his simple promise to you, that you're gonna see more. You're gonna see more of him as soon as you figure out what you really want. And I used to want to do things that worked, and a couple things I did worked and a couple didn't. But I'm not measuring my success by what works now. I'm saying what lasts. Like there's a big difference between what works and what lasts. Remember pet rocks? Those worked for a while until everybody figured out it's a rock. I just paid $35 for a rock. It didn't last. Do things that'll last. I'll tell you, this'll last. This'll last. When my kids were about the size of trout, I got one of these mirrors, and I would hold them to them in the morning. I'd say, Lindsay, you look right here. And she's like, Dad, not the mirror. I'm like, get counseling later. But I'd hold it up to her. I'd say, Lindsay, you're a woman of virtue. You know what I've seen in you? I've seen a courageous girl. You know who you are. You love your family. I've got a son, Richard. He's 6'9", and he's still growing. In another couple feet, it's going to be weird. And I'll hold it up to him. I'll say, you're huge. I'll say, Richard, you're a man of valor. And there's something to, I have a son, Adam. He's just nuts. I mean, he skydives. If you can't lose your arm doing it, he's not interested. And I'll hold it up to him. I'll be, Adam, you'll be dead by 30. But you know what? You go home and get a mirror and start showing it to your kids, to your spouse, to the people who work with you. And just hold them and say, let me tell you who you're turning into. Let's forget who you were. I've been hanging out with old Bob for 58 years. I know everything about him. You know who I met this morning about 4 or 5 hours ago? New Bob. He's that guy. He jumped out of the bed, lost his computer, left it in the hotel. But like new Bob, he's still forgetful, it turns out. But one of the things about new Bob is that he's not hung up with all of his old screw-ups. And that's what keeps us wrapped around the axle. I mean, just think of the biggest secret that you felt like you've had to keep. You've got some relationship that wasn't right, or something you saw or did, and you're like, oh man, how could I have done that? And you're just beating yourself up. And you know what? On your very worst day, over your biggest screw up you're thinking about right now, do you know what Jesus calls you? He calls you beloved. And if you're not hearing the word beloved spoken over your big screw up right now, it ain't Jesus talking. And so I would just check that out to say, man, this invitation, I'd make a lousy evangelical because I don't think we lead people to Jesus. I think Jesus leads people to Jesus. What he whispers over your ears, men, is beloved. And if you have a right understanding of who you are in God's eyes, then you can hold this thing up to your kids and your wives and say, man, I'm new me. Here, check this out. There he is. I wish there was more there, but that's what we got. But if you could just understand this, then you get to do more of this. And there's nothing complicated about it. I mean, I've spent my whole life trying to make my faith easy, and it ain't easy. If I'm reading all these pages right, it'll kill you. But what I'm trying to do is make my faith simple, right? Just Jesus is the smartest theologian ever to walk the face of the earth till John Piper got here. And he sees two sheep, and he points to him. He says, it's like kind of like when one of those gets away. Just return to a simplest version of your faith and know what you want. I read all the stories now about the blind guys. I'm like, these are my people. And Jesus walked up to a guy at the gate, and he's like, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind. And Jesus said, what do you want? He's like, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind. I don't think Jesus was confused about it. I think he wants to know from you and I what we want. And if you want a Porsche, just say, I want a Porsche. You're not getting one, but just get it out there. Don't fake it. Don't say, oh, we're world peace. Like, just say, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a more engaged husband. But don't let off right there and say better. I want to be better too. Go get one of these, literally. Like, that will make you a better husband, because you'll look closely at the people around you. You'll start giving away your corner office and get the lousiest cubicle. You'll just start doing these crazy things because you know what you want. You know what I want? I want to be a grandpa. I got 3 kids. 2 of them are married, so I got 2 ponies in that race. My 3rd son, I said, you're not a pony in that race yet. But I want to be a grandpa so bad, and I got nothing. I'm barren. I actually got my son and his wife a hotel room a couple weeks ago. I made them hoodies that say, make people. Do you guys need a flip chart? I told them, man, if you don't get busy and start making people, like Marie and I, we're going to make another one, and that's just nasty. So know what you want and then do something about it. Just so I want everybody in Houston to be dry and happy. That's terrific. Go next door. Do the thing. It's like throwing them a softball. Bring a softball with you. If we start doing that thing, we get everything right. Because I want to be a grandpa, I've started working on my bad grandpa jokes. I mean, you have to. It's part of the deal. And this is the only one I know so far. What did 0 say to 8? Nice belt. Let that sink in on you. Like, you'll start doing the craziest things because you know what you want. And for some of you that want to go deeper in your faith, don't just say, hey, I'd really like to be closer to God. Just actually go be closer to God. Just go do those things that'll get you there. I was supposed to speak at a thing and they said, Bob is going to say something inspiring this morning. Have you ever had one of those mornings you're not feeling very inspiring? I'm like, no. And I actually looked up what the word inspire means. You know what it means? It just means to take a deep breath. Here, take one with me. We're not going to do a bunch of yoga, just, yeah, there's something. You know what a conspiracy is? It's just 2 people. It's not Putin and Trump. It's just 2 people taking a deep breath together. What if you went home and said, honey, I know I've been running so fast with my work. I just want to take a breath with you right now. I know that sounds so weird. We don't need to burn incense. But I was talking to somebody about like what it means to be inspired, and I want to live an inspired marriage again. That's when I said I do and you did. That's what we had in mind. Let's return to that. Let's figure out a way that we could return to who we used to be. These versions of ourselves where we weren't all worn out. And some of you are a job or 2 behind who you've turned into. Literally, your job was terrific for you then, but you know it isn't the right way. Half of you guys are afraid you're going to lose your job, and the other half of you are afraid you're going to keep it. Like, what if you just say, go to your wife or the person that you love the most, write them a letter tonight, and write your resignation. Literally, say, I'm done. Address it to your boss, put a stamp in it. Even if you're the boss, write it to the board. And say, give it to your spouse. And say, if this job ever gets in the way of our marriage, I want you to mail it in. You don't even need to tell me, I'll find out. And some of you guys are now like, no, you're like, no. But you know what? Those will be the kind of stories that outlive you. The heroic things that people are doing, these random but intentional acts of love that are happening all over Houston that I'm hearing about. Every selfless act of love is a declaration of faith. It's like, this is what I actually believe. Forget all the complicated words. This is what I believe as you're ripping the drywall out. Oh, you guys. And be the kind of people that they're talking about you for generations. How many inches you got left? About 5? I'm right behind you. I got about 6. I want them to talk about you and I in these winsome ways. You know what my kids will remember? They'll say, he memorized my fingerprint. You know what? That wasn't my idea. You know who I got that idea from? My grandparents. Literally, my grandparents were the most influential people in my whole life. You know the crazy part? My grandfather's on the left. I haven't asked. So, but you know the thing about him? He was a fireman. He was a longshoreman in San Francisco. He worked the graveyard shift for 40 years, and he never put out a fire. He probably didn't know how. But you know what he did? He memorized my thumbprint. And I'm going to be telling my grandkids, if we ever have any, and their kids and their kids. I want people talking about you and a legacy of love grounded in faith. And this beautiful idea of faith in Jesus, it's this simple. There's no magic words. It's just saying, you know what? I'm in. Is there more to your faith than that? Yeah, don't worry about it. Just, I'm in. And then what's beautiful, it's Matthew 16. So I have this big moment with Peter. Jesus said, who does everybody say I am? And they said, well, some say you're a teacher and some say you're a prophet, but I think you're God. And he said, Peter, you nailed it. And 2 sentences later, it said, don't tell anybody. Isn't that crazy? Like nobody after the big moment and he nailed it? I think the message is this: show people, don't tell people. And when you get this thing out, you just showed your whole family your whole faith. When you get the mirror out and you do that, I'm telling you, remember you guys have iPhones. This is a real camera. The camera films like $20 a picture. Like, come on. But you remember these things? It used to take a little while to develop, right? And it's all kind of murky. That's what it feels like to be married. Wouldn't you agree? And some of you, when you have these things, you do this to make it develop faster. That actually doesn't work in marriage either. Stop it. But just let God develop what he's got going in you. Know what it is that's actually going to outlast you. And then for those of you where faith is a big deal, man, don't just skip around and take the parts that you like. Take all of it. It says love your enemies. Well, I don't want to love my enemies. They stink. But he goes on to say, love your enemies so you can be perfect. I don't like that verse. I'd rather cut it out. Actually, Thomas Jefferson did the same thing right there. He made the Jefferson Bible. It's pretty thin. It's only the parts he agrees with. Isn't that awesome? I've got one. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I just don't get yet, but don't go that route. Don't start cutting out the parts that are difficult. And what will happen, you come by it easily. And I do too, because I just walk around a little bit dazed. Always enthusiastic, but usually a little dazed. I've got a son, Richard, the tall one. And he sleepwalks all the way through high school. He would get up at 1 a.m. I'd hear him walking downstairs, go right out the front door in his boxers. And so I would get up every morning at 1 a.m. I'd go out of the front door in mine, and we'd just stand together on the edge of the street. Now, I don't want to wake him up because, I read the books, you wake him up, he'll be living with you when you're 40. So I would just stand there with him until he said, I'm going to go in now. I'm like, all right. And the next morning, I'd always ask him, how'd you sleep, buddy? He's like a rock. I'm like, not. But it happens to us. We look awake. I mean, you look awake to me, but I'm not sure. Hey, you look kind of awake, but that idea, and I look usually, but oftentimes I've just got this narcolepsy going on, I just kind of fell asleep. It's like we're the walking dead. And the way you can tell someone's really alive is their joy. Literally, that's how you tell. There's this guy I know, his name is Bill Hybels. He's a really nice guy, and I know him from sailing. And he was a pastor of this church, and they had this gathering. And he said, will you come to speak at this thing? And I'm like, oh, okay. So I get to Chicago, and I pull up to his church. It's called Willow Creek. It's bigger than Disneyland. I'm like, who are you people? And then Mark Burnett, the TV guy, lands his helicopter in the parking lot. I thought I was coming to this. It's called the Global Leadership Conference, it turns out. I'm speaking after Colin Powell. So I'm sitting next to Bill writing out what I'm going to talk about. He's like, you're writing your talk? I'm like, I want it to be fresh. Well, I never thought he'd have me back again. No way after that big screw up, but he did. So the next time I went, I brought a live chicken with me. I'm like, why not? And do you know, because I spent a lot of time in Uganda. Men, you got to go home and do this. So after the flood, there's chickens everywhere. You can actually hypnotize a chicken. What you do is you put it on its back and you just rub it right here about 20 times. And its eyes will like roll back in its head and it's out cold. And once it was out cold, I put my hands in my pockets and I gave the rest of the sermon. And everybody's thinking, when's the chicken gonna wake up? I had a guy with a pellet gun in the wings just in case. But I think that's exactly how God feels about us. When are we gonna wake up? Because I say, like, Bob, you wrote such a nice book. It's got balloons on it. Sweet Maria's so nice. You got a puppy. And what we end up doing is looking awake, but we've lost our joy. We've lost the ability to look closely. If there's one thing I want us to do is to just get back to the difficult demands of Scripture, like loving our enemies. I mean, and there's plenty of people that are creepy. I mean, it's easy to love the people that are nice. I mean, hang around me for a while. I'll make you feel like you're a boss at loving people. And my friends make me feel like I'm a boss at loving them because they're really nice people. But I think if you want to know where you're at in your faith, it's how do you love the people who creep you out? And that's what I'm working on. Like literally, there's only one I can think of right now. Never try to cut your own sideburns. Like, are we just going to watch this stuff? The guy's got a nuke. Or are we going to do something? So the kids and I wrote him a letter. There's the address. Like literally, don't just watch this stuff. Engage life. And I'm not a political guy, I just want anybody. We just translated Love Does into 16 languages. I just translated it into Russian. We mailed it off to Putin. Evidently, he's got a nuke or two as well. I want to be a participant. And the way we're a participant isn't to spend all your time trying to figure out what God's will for your life is. Like it's some map. The only thing Jesus has in his back pocket is a picture of you, and I bet your thumbprint. I think that's all he's got. Matthew 25. It says, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me. I was creepy. I was sick and you comforted me. I was naked and you clothed me, and I was in jail and you came. That's it. Hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, and people in jail. There's no other plan. That's it. That's all you're going to talk about Jesus forever about. And so what I've been trying to do is I don't want to get there and not have anything to say. I mean, we are not going to be singing Chris Tomlin songs for eternity. Like there's going to be a discussion. I just want to do some of that stuff. So there's a place called In-N-Out Burger by us. Have you guys been to In-N-Out Burger? Change your life, right? It should be a unit of measure. Well, I'll go buy 50 burgers and I'll drive around San Diego. I'll just ask somebody like, are you hungry? And they'll be like, I am. I'm like, have a burger. And I don't write like Jesus loves you. If you've had a double-double, you know he loves you. I have little bottles of water. I'm like, are you thirsty? They'd be like, I am. I'm like, here's this, we've got a nude beach in La Jolla. I just go to the top of the cliff and throw socks over. I'm like, naked people. So instead of just agreeing about, let God develop something amazing in you. And it happens a little bit at a time. It happens like this. Like if you want to develop this stuff, and with all the guys that were with Jesus, and they were talking in Matthew 25 about this, they all said the same thing my son says. Adam, the risk taker. He's a little, I think it's auditory processing. Like you say something, and he'll say, even if you say pass the mashed potatoes, he'll say, wait, what? Anybody have a kid that does that? Yeah, that is his little tick. And in Matthew 25, they have the wait, what moment. They say, wait, what? That was you? Like you were the person? I've spent my whole life avoiding the people Jesus spent his whole life engaging. Do you know why? I didn't want to get any on me. And the message of the gospel is to get it on you. Get it all over you. And you know what? You look just like Jesus. So we're headed to Somalia in a week. I mean, it's just a terrifying place. I've been there now dozens of times. We've stayed in 3 hotels. They've all been blown up. In Somalia, they won't teach little girls how to read or write. Isn't that crazy? And we're like, forget that. So we have a school with little girls. We got guys with machine guns that are guarding their hearts. I'm the consul general for Uganda. I won't give you a parking ticket. So one of the things that you do is figure out what you're good at and then go do lots of that, whatever it is. We chartered, there's a famine that hit Somalia, and I'm like, hungry people, right? So I didn't know this until last week, but you can put enough food for 100,000 people in one huge cargo plane. So we're landing it in the desert on the 8th. It's gonna be awesome. I do not wanna die falling off my toilet at home. I'd rather do on a sand dune. Now I want to be a grandpa, but I really want to have stuff to talk to Jesus about. If he wants to talk about hungry people, then we talk about hungry people. We've been sending books, this Love Does book, to all these federal prisons everywhere. Manson, the Unabomber, everybody's got one from me. It's pretty creepy. Sweet Maria thinks it's a really bad idea. I'm like, they won't be out for a while. Well, I got a letter back from this guy, and he said, I've been reading your book, and some stuff has started to change in my life. Do you know who he is? He's the 4th pirate from Captain Phillips. He's the one guy that didn't get shot in the face. And so if we're avoiding guys like that, I'm not learning. I'm not trying to be a nice guy. I'm trying to be an obedient guy. And if for those of you where whether you're starting with Jesus, you've been doing it for long, do what you can. Bring all your A game. There's a bunch of prisoners that are passing this book from cell to cell. There's a whole bunch of lifers up in Minneapolis that they get together, they're reading this book together, and they said, well, what could we do? I mean, we're in jail for life. You know what they've been doing? Every 3 weeks, they send me a box of socks. They buy these prison socks for $1.25. And they say, Bob, will you just give the socks out to people? Isn't that great for people that can't walk in our shoes? You can walk in our socks. And they write these messages of hope and encouragement. I don't care who you are and what you do. God is developing something beautiful in you. He started when you met that girl. You spent all this time trying to get her to like you. Spend some time getting to know her again. And then what God does is he takes us into the business world, into our communities that have suffered so much loss, and it's like he launches us out there. He just does that. And we just end up wherever we end up. And at the end of the day, we all end up, my worldview, is at the feet of Jesus. And when I get there, I don't want to talk about all the swell things I did. I think my wait what moment is the times where he tells me that person's house that got cleaned out was actually me. Do you know that woman you were married to? That was actually me. You know your kids? That was actually me. And if we went home, because I know I'll be saying, wait, what? But we get to anticipate that now. And we get to say, he wants to talk about hungry and thirsty and sick and strange and naked people. And people, he wants to talk about your families. He wants you to run home to them. And so take the rest of the day off if you need to. Go get a mirror, get a magnifying glass, write your resignation letter, whatever it is that gets you to the next version of you, the next humblest guy. Well, you guys, I was so privileged to be with you. I don't want to go late, but man, I'm just so grateful that you gave me a little time to talk to you. You're the leaders. I mean, this is your time. I'm not blowing sunshine at you. It's just a fact. You're the business leaders, you're the community leaders, and you have this beautiful and amazing privilege to do great big things. And what I guess I'm saying, on behalf of all your kids and your wife and everybody else, the people that work for you, whose eyes are on you, go get one of these. You say, let me just see your thumb there for a second. I'm not going to memorize this and you get a restraining order. But what I'm going to do is I want to see the small things, because I think small things become great big things in people's lives. And if you don't believe it's true, I'll end with a story, and it came from Jesus. He said, so look at the mustard seed, the smallest seed ever, right? And you guys are all familiar with the story. Well, I'm a lawyer. I had to check. The mustard seed is not the smallest seed. It's actually a Peruvian orchid, and it's 4 1 millionths of an ounce. And so the story isn't about the seed, though. The story is about what it turns into. And if you take back the smallest thing that you gathered from our time this afternoon, the smallest kindness that you met from somebody here, and bring it back, the parable is about the tree that it grows into to give people rest. Men of God, you are here right now in your families, in this community, to give people rest. So just do plenty of that. And things will continue to change. You know how much time, you got your little piece of paper there? Literally, go home. Okay, your wife's got one of these. Cut it up, like literally. That isn't scary, that's just beautiful. You got a handful of time, a handful of friends. Let's just go like make some moves. Things that are gonna actually outlast you. Hey, thanks a million. Can I pray for you guys? Would that be okay? Could we keep our eyes open? We get to spend eternity together. I want you to know what I look like. Jesus, be with each man in this room. Make him strong. Make him courageous. Make him just like you. Give them the guts and the grit to see small things as big things, to give rest to their family, to be present, not just in proximity. And thanks so much for what you're doing in this community and the outflowing of love from this room and so many others. So we acknowledge your authority over us. You're God, we're not, we're just yours. In your strong name, amen. Thanks, you guys.